The vast chamber of the Galactic Council was a masterpiece of alien architecture, its walls shimmering with bioluminescent etchings that depicted the Empire's triumphs across millennia. Delegates from countless species filled their respective tiers, their varied forms, scaled, feathered, metallic, and ethereal, buzzing with quiet unease. At the center of it all stood Commander Zarek, a towering figure with emerald scales and a coiled tail, a symbol of the Empire's military might. His voice, deep and deliberate, resonated as he addressed the assembly. "We are gathered to discuss the impossible," Zarek announced, his black eyes narrowing. The myths of humanity, long dismissed as the fancies of primitive cultures, have returned, not as whispers, but as a fleet. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The Council was a body accustomed to control, a power that shaped the galaxy unchallenged for eons. The suggestion that the humans, creatures from forgotten lore, might not only exist but possess the audacity to approach the Empire's borders was unthinkable. Zarek raised a clawed hand, activating a holo-display. A grainy recording appeared, captured from the wreckage of an Imperial patrol ship. It showed sleek, angular vessels with hulls that shimmered like liquid steel, moving in perfect formation. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in the Empire's databases. As the recording ended, a voice echoed in perfect galactic standard, cool and unyielding. "Asterisk, we have returned." Asterisk. Before anyone could respond, the chamber darkened. The holograms flickered, replaced by an image of a man standing aboard the bridge of a massive starship. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in a dark, functional uniform devoid of ornamentation. His eyes were sharp and calculating, his presence commanding. "I am Captain Jack Mercer of the United States Stellar Fleet," the man said. His tone was calm, but carried a weight that silenced the room. "Humanity has been watching you for a long time. We've seen your conquests, your oppression, your arrogance. And now, we've come to reclaim our place in the stars." A wave of tension swept the chamber, but Jack's expression didn't waver. Behind him, the silhouettes of his officers stood in shadow, each a piece of the puzzle that had made humanity's return possible. At his right stood Dwayne Wires-Taylor, the chief engineer, his sleeves perpetually rolled up, his gaze scanning the feed with the mind of a man always calculating the next step. To Jack's left, Lieutenant Marcus Reyes leaned casually against a console, his smirk betraying confidence even in the face of an entire empire. And looming just out of frame, Sergeant Travis Bull O'Connor held his ground like a fortress, his arms crossed, his eyes daring anyone to underestimate him. One of the counselors, a crystalline entity whose voice chimed like breaking glass, finally broke the silence. "Humans are extinct. This is a trick, a ploy by dissidents seeking to sow chaos." Jack's lips twitched into a faint smile, though his eyes remained hard. "If we were extinct, you wouldn't be scrambling to figure out how we've already destroyed your patrol fleets. I assure you, we are very real." Another counselor, an avian creature with iridescent feathers, spread its wings in agitation. "What is it you want, human? Do you seek war? To topple the Empire? Your fleet may have surprised a few ships, but against our might, you cannot hope to survive." Jack leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "We want justice. For centuries, humanity survived on the edges of nothing, scavenging from ruins while your empire grew fat off the resources you took from worlds like ours. We're not here to beg for scraps. We're here to offer terms." "Terms?" Zarek's voice was a low growl. "You are in no position to offer anything, let alone terms." Jack's smile faded entirely. "Then let me be clear. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We've had enough of war. But we will not tolerate the tyranny of the Empire any longer. Dismantle your oppressive systems. Free the species you've enslaved. Or we will do it for you." The council erupted into chaos, voices shouting over one another, some calling for immediate retaliation, others demanding caution. Zarek's claws clenched into fists. The arrogance of this human, a creature from a species thought dead, was unthinkable. And yet, the footage of their fleet, the sheer precision and power it displayed, was impossible to ignore. Silence! Zarek's voice cut through the cacophony, bringing order to the chamber. He turned his gaze to the projection of Jack Mercer. You believe your fleet, impressive as it may be, can stand against the combined might of the Empire? You are deluded. We have the resources of 10,000 worlds. What do you have? Jack straightened, his expression unreadable. We have something you can't match, Commander. We adapt, we innovate, and we don't stop until we win. Before Zarek could respond, the feed shifted. A second fleet emerged from hyperspace on the recording. Imperial reinforcements, their ships bristling with weaponry. But the humans didn't falter. Instead, the recording showed their ships moving with surgical precision, exploiting weaknesses no Imperial captain had ever considered. Within minutes, the reinforcements were in disarray, their flagship disabled by a single, devastating strike. Jack's voice returned, steady and unyielding. This is your only warning. Stand down or face the consequences. The feed cut out, leaving the chamber in silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then Zarek spoke, his voice a low rumble. Counselors, it seems the myths were true, and they have come to remind us why we feared them. The tension in the room was palpable as the council deliberated their response. The Empire had crushed every rebellion, silenced every dissident, but this was different. This was a force that didn't fit into their neat systems of control. This was a force that thought, adapted, and struck without hesitation. Zarek turned to the council, his tone colder than ever. If humanity seeks to challenge us, they will learn what it means to defy the Empire. Far from the chamber, aboard the USS Liberty's Spear, Jack Mercer watched the feed terminate. He exhaled slowly, turning to his crew. Think they bought it? Reyes asked, leaning against the console with a grin. They bought it, Jack said, his voice steel. But now they'll come for us with everything they have. Bull cracked his knuckles, his grin feral. Good. Let 'em try. Jack nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He looked out at the stars, where the first of many battles awaited. They think we're just myths, he said quietly. Time to remind them what legends are made of. The Galactic Council convened in the Grand Hall once more, but this time, the atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of fear. The humans had made their declaration. Now, the Empire needed to decide whether to take the threat seriously or dismiss it as an elaborate bluff. Commander Zarek, his scaled hands clasped behind his back, stood in the center of the chamber. His commanding presence, usually enough to settle disputes, now seemed diminished under the weight of uncertainty. The chamber dimmed, signaling the incoming communication. The humans were calling again. A holographic projection of Captain Jack Mercer materialized at the heart of the room. This time, his officers stood clearly visible behind him. Dwayne Wires Taylor with his perpetually furrowed brow, Marcus Reyes with his calculating smirk, and Travis Bull O'Connor, his muscular frame as immovable as his stare. Each figure radiated confidence, but their unity was what struck the council most, a sharp contrast to the fragmented debates they'd had since the first message. I hope the council has taken time to consider my words, Jack began, his voice steady. Humanity doesn't ask for much. We demand only what's fair. Freedom for all the species you've subjugated, and a commitment to end your endless cycle of conquest. But if you believe we're here to negotiate, you've misunderstood our intentions. The crystalline delegate to Zarek's right shifted uneasily, its light fractals dimming. Captain Mercer, it began, its voice like shattering glass. You stand here issuing ultimatums as if your position is unassailable. Yet your fleet, while impressive, cannot hope to stand against the full might of the Empire. We have endured countless threats. What makes you think you are different? Mercer's expression didn't change. Because humanity is different. You've built your empire on fear and domination. You crush rebellion before it begins, because your enemies never think to challenge your rules. But We don't play by your rules. And if you try to force our hand, you'll find we've spent centuries learning how to fight when the odds aren't in our favor. Behind him, Reyes leaned forward slightly, his tone carrying a sharp edge. You've studied our myths, haven't you? Heard the stories of what humans are capable of. Those myths were warnings. The crystalline delegate faltered, its response drowned by the avian counselor's sharp trill. Empty bravado. You speak of rebellion and war, but the Empire is absolute. Do you honestly believe your fleet of relics stands a chance against us? Jack took a deliberate step closer to the holographic interface, his gaze unwavering. We've already proven otherwise. The patrol fleets you lost? That wasn't even the best of what we have to offer. If you doubt our strength, test us. But know this. If you push us to war, we will not stop until we've dismantled every piece of your corrupt machine. Zarek, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the chamber. Arrogance is a dangerous weapon, Captain. It blinds you to the consequences of your actions. Even if your fleet has won a few battles, you cannot possibly comprehend the scale of what you're facing. The Empire's reach is limitless. And that's your mistake, Jack replied, his voice calm but firm. You've grown too large to adapt, too complacent to innovate. Humanity has thrived because we've never had the luxury of complacency. We survived in the void alone for centuries. Every piece of our technology, every ship, every weapon, it exists because we had no choice but to push beyond what anyone thought possible. You may have the numbers, but we have something far more valuable. Ingenuity. Zarek's claws flexed, a sign of his growing irritation. You speak of survival as if it grants you superiority. Survival is a necessity, not a virtue. And if you think your so-called ingenuity will save you, then you are even more foolish than I thought. The tension in the room was palpable. Even the most stalwart counselors seemed shaken, their confidence eroded by the humans' unwavering defiance. But Jack didn't waver. His gaze swept across the alien faces before him, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. Then let me make it simple for you, he said. Humanity doesn't need your approval to exist. We don't need your permission to fight for what's right. If you want to treat us as an enemy, we'll fight like one. But if you're wise, you'll recognize that this is your chance to change, to become something better than the tyrants you've been for centuries. Reyes chuckled quietly, muttering just loud enough for the council to hear. Not that we're holding our breath. The projection flickered slightly as Jack turned to face Zarek directly. You have one standard cycle to decide. Stand down and begin the process of dismantling your oppressive systems, or prepare for a war unlike anything you've faced before. The hologram vanished, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For a moment no one spoke. Then, slowly, the arguments began. Counselors shouting over one another, some calling for immediate retaliation, others urging caution. Zarek stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the now empty space where Jack's image had been. They are bluffing, the crystalline delegate said, though its tone lacked conviction. They must be... Zarek's tail lashed against the floor, silencing the chamber. Bluff or not, we cannot ignore this threat. Humanity has shown capabilities we cannot explain, and their fleet has already proven its strength. If we underestimate them, it will be our undoing. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. The Empire had always been a symbol of absolute power, unchallenged for millennia. But now, for the first time, that power felt fragile, vulnerable. The humans weren't like the countless rebellions the Empire had crushed. They were something else entirely, something the Empire didn't fully understand. Far from the council chamber, aboard the USS Liberty's Spear, Jack stood at the center of his bridge, his crew watching him intently. He exhaled slowly, his posture relaxed but his mind racing. They'll come for us, Wire said, his voice matter-of-fact. It's what they do. They can't afford to let us be. I know, Jack replied. His tone was calm, but there was a fire in his eyes. And when they do, we'll be ready. Reyes grinned, leaning back in his chair. Think they'll make it the full cycle before trying something stupid? Doesn't matter, Jack said, turning to the viewport. Beyond the glass, the stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of how far humanity had come, and how much further they had to go. They think they're facing an enemy they can crush with numbers and brute force. What they don't realize is that we've already won the first battle. Bull cracked his knuckles, his voice a low rumble. And we're just getting started. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Let's see what they do next. The first signs of the Empire's retaliation came faster than expected. Captain Jack Mercer stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty's Spear, the flagship of the human fleet, as alarms rang out in crisp, efficient tones. The tactical display projected a three-dimensional map of the surrounding sector, where hundreds of red markers flickered into view, an armada of Imperial ships bearing down on them. They didn't wait for the full cycle, Lieutenant Marcus Reyes said, leaning casually against the edge of his console, though his sharp eyes betrayed his readiness. Guess we got under their skin. Jack didn't respond immediately. His piercing gaze swept over the map, absorbing the scale of the oncoming assault. Every movement of the Imperial fleet was deliberate, each formation a textbook display of their overwhelming firepower and numbers. It was a strategy designed to intimidate, to crush resistance before it could take root. What are we looking at? Wires. Jack asked, his tone calm. Dwayne Wires. Taylor's fingers flew across the controls, his face illuminated by the glow of the tactical display. Scans confirm it's a full fleet group, estimated 200 capital ships plus escorts. They're bringing the heavy hitters. Jack nodded. And us? Wires grinned despite the situation, the faintest glint of mischief in his eyes. 24 ships. But ours don't break as easily as theirs. A low chuckle rumbled from Sergeant Travis Bull O'Connor, who stood with his arms crossed near the tactical station. Good. More of them means we don't have to waste time hunting. The tension on the bridge was palpable, but no one faltered. The officers of the Liberty Spear had spent years preparing for this moment. Humanity had clawed its way back from the brink of extinction, and every man on this ship had dedicated himself to ensuring their survival. Comms, Jack said, turning to the communications officer. Broadcast to the fleet. Tight beam. The officer nodded, and Jack's voice rang out across the void, reaching every human ship in the sector. This is Captain Mercer. The Empire thinks they can break us with sheer numbers, but they don't understand who they're dealing with. We've faced extinction and come out stronger. We've been fighting impossible odds since the day we left Earth. This isn't just a battle. It's the moment we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Stick to your training, trust your crews, and remember why we're here. Mercer out. The bridge crew exchanged glances, their determination renewed. Jack turned back to the tactical display, his mind already several steps ahead. Wires. Give me options. Taylor's hands moved quickly as he brought up new data. They're advancing in a standard wedge formation, tight in the center, vulnerable along the flanks. If we force their outer edges to collapse inward, we can disrupt their cohesion. Jack nodded. Reyes, you're on strike coordination. Use the Ironclad and Vanguard to hit those flanks hard. Bull, I want you on forward assault. Take Hammerfall and Retribution and draw their center fire. Bull's grin widened. Gladly. Jack straightened, his voice resolute. We hold the line here. Let's show them what ingenuity looks like. The fleet moved into action. Human ships, designed with sleek, angular frames and advanced adaptive shielding, slipped into their positions with practiced precision. The Liberty's Spear led the charge, its engines burning bright as it advanced toward the heart of the enemy formation. The first salvos of energy weapons lit up the void, streaks of crimson and sapphire cutting across the blackness of space. The Empire's capital ships unleashed devastating volleys of plasma and kinetic rounds, their firepower unmatched by anything most civilizations could hope to field. But humanity had anticipated this. Shields holding, Wires reported, his hands steady on the controls. Adaptive systems compensating for their frequencies. They'll need to try harder than that. Make them regret it, Jack ordered. The Liberty's spear returned fire, its railguns delivering pinpoint strikes that tore through enemy shields with ruthless efficiency. Flanking Imperial ships attempted to encircle the human fleet, only to be met by the coordinated counterattack of the Ironclad and Vanguard, their weapons surgically dismantling the enemy's formation. Meanwhile, at the center of the battle, Bull O'Connor's assault group charged headfirst into the Imperial wedge. The Hammerfall absorbed the brunt of the enemy's firepower, its reinforced hull and experimental armor deflecting devastating blows. With Bull at the helm, the ship became an unstoppable force, plowing through the Imperial front lines and scattering their ships like debris. "They're breaking formation," Reyes reported, his voice sharp. "Their flanks are folding inward, just like we planned." "Keep the pressure on," Jack said. "They're not used to fighting anyone who can outmaneuver them." As the battle raged on, the human fleet continued to exploit every weakness in the Empire's strategy. Their adaptive technology allowed them to adjust tactics in real time, countering the Empire's brute force approach with precision and ingenuity. For every ship humanity lost, 3 Imperial vessels fell in return. Still, the battle was far from over. The Empire's fleet was vast, and its reinforcements were already en route. Jack knew they couldn't hold this position indefinitely. "Wires, status on the jump drives?" Jack asked. "Charged and ready," Wires replied. "We've got enough juice for one coordinated jump, but it's going to be close." Jack's mind raced. They had inflicted significant damage on the Empire's forces, but staying any longer risked annihilation. It was time to make their exit and send a message. "Reyes, target their flagship," Jack ordered. "I want it crippled but not destroyed. They need to remember this day." Reyes grinned, his fingers dancing across his console. "Consider it done." The Liberty Spear unleashed a devastating barrage, its railguns and missile systems hammering the Imperial flagship's shields until they collapsed. The ship's engine sputtered, its massive frame listing to one side as fire spread across its hull. "Bull, pull back your group," Jack commanded. "Wires, initiate the jump. Get us out of here." The human fleet began to withdraw, their ships disappearing into hyperspace one by one. The Liberty's spear was the last to leave, its engines burning brightly as it vanished into the void. When the Imperial reinforcements arrived moments later, they found only wreckage, a graveyard of shattered ships and smoldering debris. At the center of it all floated their crippled flagship, its systems barely functional, a stark reminder of the price they had paid. Far from the battlefield, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, battered but victorious. On the bridge of the Liberty's spear, Jack stood silently, his gaze fixed on the tactical display as the last of their ships checked in. "Status," he asked. "Damage across the fleet," Wires reported, but we held the line. "They'll think twice before underestimating us again." Jack nodded, his expression unreadable. He turned to the viewport, where the stars stretched endlessly before them. "They thought we were myths," he said quietly. "Now they know better, and this is only the beginning."